What's up, beautiful people? This is Elijah from Modern Mantra. Welcome back to another episode of the Modern Mantra podcast. For those who may not know, Modern Mantra is not just a podcast. We are a venture design studio made up of a collective of technologists, designers, and creatives that are all coming together in a mission of heart-centered innovation. So if that sounds up your alley, if you would like to collaborate with the studio, if you would like to join the studio, if you would like to simply learn more about what we do, all of that can be done at modernmantra.co.
Today's guest is someone who's pushing the boundaries of what we perceive to be reality, taking us into the uncharted territories of the mind and spirit. His name is Theodore Bajard, a man who wears many hats: experience designer, art curator, storyteller, and most importantly, a dream weaver. He's also the founder of a company called RIMA, storytelling and artist collective that's revolutionizing the way we experience immersive art. At RIMA, they're blurring the lines between fiction and reality, using art as a transformative tool to create fully realized cinematic, immersive, multi-day experiences. I had the pleasure of sharing a space for a month with the RIMA crew, being surrounded by some of the most talented and expansive individuals the world has to offer. The RIMA experiences are wild, innovative, and life-changing, and create fresh outlooks for anybody who shows up. This isn't an ad, this is just the truth. What they're doing is truly groundbreaking, and we're about to get an insider's look at the man behind the spiritual mission, bringing the world into a more guided place. So let's give a big old welcome to Theodore.
Everything is going to boil down to distribution. Yeah. This is my whole thesis on this, is that when AI really hits, and we're at the point where everybody's a software engineer, everybody is an audio engineer, everybody a graphic designer, everyone a videographer, the only thing that's going to matter is your distribution. Yeah. Do you have trust in the audience that you're appealing to? Yeah. And do you have means to distribute the product at scale? Yeah. Because the cost of software production is going to fall to zero in 5 years. This is something that people don't realize is about to happen.
So then content.
It's content. Yeah. It's distribution. And really, if you peel back the layers, it's trust. It's trust with you as an individual to be able to lead us into this next wave of innovation. And it's trust with the way that you're doing it, the energy that's being put out. Because, for example, you went to High Talk, right? But you're going to be able to create an app that pretty much does anything just by speaking it, right? Yeah. So it's like, there's not going to be any moat or any matter of differentiation between you and any other product in a 5-year runway. So what are you going to buy from?
Yeah, it's going to be like, at the end of the day, you say trust and authenticity, transparency, and how we can relate with people and maybe create this decentralized economy where everything is micro project, and then you have only like a 1,000 fan, this theory, and then after everyone can create this immaterial value, which, because this is creativity, is going to be the main driver and engine for humanity, and it's going to be lasting. And then from there, it might be quite amazing, this future. I'm pretty excited, actually.
Yeah, another thing I was reading about yesterday is like, this new future is this company that's working on the removal of us having to take calls with companies. So you basically have all your preferences uploaded to an AI. You have the customer support AI for the companies, and you can have the AI make a call on your behalf to the company, have a full conversation asking the question, explaining the preferences, and actually have a response from the AI from the company. And then you only are notified when an action step is needed to either approve or decline that specific thing. Yeah, think about that. So you have your own personal digital twin wrapped up into the server that's talking to a digital twin of the customer support agent or the financier or anybody else that you want to speak to at a company. They negotiate and only notify the actual human beings when there's something important that needs to be decided on.
How much space it's freeing for us, like, to be more human, to be more creative, to be more in a space of really looking into it. If you think about it, suddenly you have a whole lot of tasks that would be just free for yourself, and being able to be more into your creation power, like being more human and connecting with others, and really thinking about meaning more and purpose, rather than just being caught up in these small little things or little action of life that is basically like holding you on from, or like preventing you from accessing your inner being somehow. It's just it's a great opportunity for everyone to tap into your true self somehow, and that is really what I think the future is about. And we have two ways to look at it, right? Even if we have an overview on this topic, it's whether we want to make the best out of it or not, and it's only a personal, individual decision. So yeah, very beautiful to see that.
Yeah, and then it becomes a question of what are the things worth keeping human, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
where do we draw the lines in terms of what we allow and optimize the AI, the bots to do? And then where do we actually focus the attention of the human being?
Yeah, like when the world will be like surrounded by so many intelligences around, and then this AGI, when this general intelligence will come out, like in this flow of information, what actually makes us feel good at the end of the day is like the way we can be creative, the way we can be pregnant and give birth to ideas and give birth to this connection. And also I've seen this article where when you're spending some time with a loving human being and you have this like deep connection, authenticity, it just reduces your inflammation rate, and your body reacts in a way that is healing itself. So just by your brain and the activity of connecting with human beings, of feeling that all these sensations that are way beyond the senses, it could be the way your skin right now react, and your heartbeat, and then how you look at me in the eyes, and all these moments are just creating within me like a sense of peace or ease, and then that is translating on my physiological level. That relationship with others is something that would be very hard to code for AI, because it won't have access to the same hardware soon. It's very micro movement. It's little subtle changes in the voice, is unconscious behaviors or unconscious patterns, and then my body is able to recognize within you, and from there create this authentic connection that give more meaning to what it is to be human.
Yeah, I like the way you put what we're pregnant with. My friend Chris has a great way of putting this as well. He says that, what is making me horny right now? So what's this person's like horny for this? I'm horny for the same thing. Started diving into it. And I'm wondering, what are you pregnant with at the moment? What's top of mind for what you're birthing in the world?
It's a very interesting process. Being passionate, being like driven by strength that is making sure you can pull yourself out. Finally, like this question of AI has come back to the idea of authenticity. By authenticity, this inner self of that genius, tapping into your genius, tapping into something that is your gift that needs to be shared, because people want that kind of singular aspect of your being, right? People are craving for this kind of diversity of who are you. And when you really get into what is this essence, what is the thing you're really good at or you want to share because you believe it's worth sharing, then it becomes the continuous nourishment of that part of yourself. And then you say, okay, so now how do I give that to the world? And I have to say, I've been quite interested in exploring what is between the like ordinary, like the real world as we know it, and the non-ordinary consciousness, meaning this kind of liminal space. Liminal, by the way, it is between the reality and the subconscious, between this idea of we are in spaces in transition, and how can we use that space in between to really gain insights on different aspects of our being. So I studied a lot this altered state of consciousness throughout dreams, throughout plant medicine, with different practices along the years. And I found in these very special places very interesting insight that is creating this kind of transmission between the subconscious and the conscious. For me, the idea of the higher self, for example, I can ask you the question, like, what do you think the higher self is for you?
Yeah. So the higher self is, to me, an expression of my soul. I believe his name is Paul Graham. He's a really great take on this. He says that your soul's not in your body. Your body is in your soul. And your soul is a field of action, right? You're just a vehicle that's inside the soul. And what it's looking to do is to create action in order to fulfill your karmic path. So when I feel into my higher self, it is what is embedded in my soul, the programming and the energies that are progressing it. And it's looking to find what other entities, what other energies looking to connect to in order to fulfill that dharma very quickly. And that's the way I see it. It's almost like a pre-programmed sort of field that hovers around me, that has certain embeddings, and everything's technological for me, right? For certain programming and certain spirits, if you will, or embedded AI that are nudging me in certain directions. And that's the way I see the higher self. How do you visualize it?
Yes, I think you're right in this interconnectedness with things, and we are sharing this collective frequency intelligence that then have an impact on our being at any moment. I have to say, what is also interesting is how your subconscious maybe sometimes gets on the way, and how these different patterns and how you tweak yourself throughout your experience of life can be like also like slowing down this process of accessing and tapping into this channel of receiving this information. So how do you actually make sure the elements of the subconscious are going into the conscious? And in that way, you make this transfer, and you can really like highlight all the blind spots that are in your subconscious and preventing you or even giving you the strength to move forward. And that's really what I'm right now working on, is that how to create these spaces where somehow like elements of the subconscious can flow into the conscious, and you can access to this insight, find these keys, do the unfeasible. Because when you are facing a situation that is not real, like a dream, for example, your subconscious doesn't know the difference. It thinks this is real. So the emotion you have, this podcast right now, I wish I just had dream last night where I was having this moment with you, and then my subconscious will have seen the difference, meaning I would have trained myself to be in my perfect condition and perfect confidence and trust to be with you at this moment. So how you can also use that dream state in your life to really transform the way reality. And that's, I think, one of the goal of my intention, of my gift to the world, is like providing a space when people can access to a power to shape their reality. And yes.
Yeah, that's the way I see the dream state, right? It's like that's the subconscious's opportunity to speak to you, right? Because I see it like clearing the cache in your computer. Like when we fall asleep, your brain is activating this whole process that's basically draining the day's information. And you have all these sub-processes that happen when you're in a dream state, right? A lot of people see when we fall asleep is actively turning the brain off. Well, a lot of people don't realize that the brain comes to life in the dream state, right? It's more active when we are sleeping.
Super active.
So the fact that you're bringing these dream states into the reality and allowing full immersion for these things with a waking consciousness, like feels like a very awesome opportunity to reprogram some really deep embedded beliefs.
Yes, these are non-ordinary consciousness are accessed by, for example, like psychedelics. And when you think about psychedelics, the word is quite simple: psyche, the mind, or the soul, and daily, which is like reveal, so manifests the mind. So a psychedelic experience is something that reveals the soul or reveals the mind. And why do we want to reveal the mind? Because we want to change our perception. We want to have a new insight on what is real or what is not, or to then give us the possibility to transcend different limitation. And I was an art creator and an art dealer for the last 10 years. And my deep intention was to bring an audience to a creative doubt, meaning like questioning like the perception of reality and making sure they can look at things with a new insight or a new perspective. And that was very insightful for me to see that artists in general, who like for 24/7 are just thinking about life in so many different ways with different facets, are bringing this knowledge, and they have this capacity to see and to perceive things that is not striking our consciousness right away because we are caught up in so many things of the daily life. So how do we allow more people to see and also to feel? And this is why this non-ordinary state of consciousness are very important, because this is where a lot of growth can happen, can flourish.
Yeah. I had a look at your background, and I found it fascinating because one of the startups, I don't know your whole spectrum of history, but one of the things is about renting art pieces. And I found it a beautiful line because, like, from my perspective, like, art is a portal. It's a portal into this new universe. So when you're giving people temporal access to these pieces of art inside of these different contexts, It almost feels like RIMA is an expression of the same central thesis, that through bringing these immersive experiences, we can actually transform the way people see the world.
You're right. It's very logical in a way that starting from just going into people's spaces, bringing just a painting that could allow someone to stop in the hallway and just on the way to the meeting, stop for 1 second and have a moment of peace or a moment of fulfill like expression of emotion. And then you are then finally from there like, going to creating a fully immersive word and scenario for 5 days for 12 people where people are really diving into what the beauty of art, of creation, of inspiration, of wonder, and then from there make their life a work of art. It was Marcel Duchamp was saying, I've been doing art for my whole life until I realized I wanted to make my life a work of art, and everything I do, everything I breathe, everything, all my connections are based on that, on this access to beauty, to harmony, to making sure art could be also a vessel for transformation.
Yeah, and that's what I really love about RIMA. It feels like a collective art experience. I did not go into the immersion down in Costa Rica, but I was hovering around you guys for about a month. And what I witnessed was your team members going and grabbing different pieces from the land. I witnessed somebody like tear off a massive piece of bamboo, a massive leaf, like putting everything together and using the collective environment to create this dream space to tell the story.
Joseph Campbell used to say, in life you have two kinds of spaces. You have the profane spaces, meaning the road, the bank, the office, and you have the sacred spaces. Sacred not in terms of religion, but sacred in a way they are places for transformation where people are really looking inside, and this is where things are changing within. How do you create these sacred spaces? Maybe here we are just sitting on this table for the podcast and you have one amazing crystal, a little item there, and then this is already creating around us a space. So nature is such a very important container. How do we enhance that nature is actually around us using symmetry, using harmony, using arrangement of item that then we can create even deeper meanings, somehow creating these kind of portals where people can jump into.
Yeah, I love that lens you're looking at it through. It's like, what is your formula for the sacred? How do we take everything, our spaces, our immersions, the things that we do, and then create the right context to immerse ourselves into from what is a mundane container into some place that is sacred? I love that transition, thinking of the places that we interact as being in that way, because that is effectively the road of spirituality, right? Like our life becomes an expression of the sacred. And the world we immerse ourselves is sacred by extension.
It was interesting for me. I received a message yesterday from someone who said, thank you so much for leading me to the spiritual path. And then I realized, but spiritual, what does that really mean? Am I spiritual? Is that kind of also a reflection? And I asked ChatGPT, what is spirituality? And it says it's a feeling of interconnectedness. It's asking you the right question about meaning. It's living a life of compassion and love. It's having different practices that link you to that sense of being that is making you part of the whole. And I was like, but it is spirituality, or it's just the human condition and just existence and just being a little bit curious about who we are and what's our role here. For me, it was so natural. And I say, okay, maybe this is spirituality. So how do we create these spaces where we are just looking inside for deeper answers or deeper questions because we don't have the answers? And it's all about the senses. It's how we can create a space where you have this continuous flow of sensation, meaning visually you are overwhelmed by this aspect of beauty, meaning you smell like what is around and just transport you to another realm because the little sweet melody like in your ears seems like it lifting you. So all this creation and then entering some territories of the mind that really push you to a space where you see more, you see something in this tunnel, you see some light, and you want to hold to that. And that is a key that then you can open so many doors in the subconscious, and then you transfer that to your reality. And we have techniques doing that. Shamans were doing that for many years. And I'm very also admirative of the work of Alejandro Jodorowsky, who was using the word psychomagic. It's a healing practice that is actually using the symbols, the power of symbols, the power of imagination, and making the participant having concrete action for subconscious to activate memories or to transcend what is possible. So when you are in a space where you went to that dream state and then you do a concrete action, which is very symbolic, I'm throwing that cup of tea like out the window because that was representing somehow a certain weight about my own psyche, and then this symbol, and we do that every day. In that symbol makes my subconscious realize, okay, you're free from that. Now you can move forward. And we use that in an amazing way. You tapping into myth, tapping into legends, tapping into all the stories of humanity, because we are human are actually weaving our story in the bigger story and the tapestry of humanity, and everything makes sense when you think about that.
Yeah, that's skill. On reflection, I feel like we've lost in a certain way. People have become we like answers. We like the black and white. And there also seems to be, not in all spaces, but this thing of this is the way. It's like formulaic, it's very linear. It's kind of like the modern spaces where there's like delineated walls. This is the space for X, not the space for Y. Versus having a space where you can derive your own meaning from the sacred practice. Right? So if I'm throwing the teacup across the room, to me it means the destruction of my past self. To somebody else, it might be stepping into their anger and be able to express that. So giving people the space to symbolically embed their own emotions into the space from a state of subconscious support and a subconscious expression, it's a beautiful formula that you put together.
Exactly. And I think, thank you for noticing that. And I appreciate you seeing it this way, because I really think these kind of experiences, I call them the odyssey. And the odyssey is a personal journey where you're going through many different steps and moment of realization throughout the journey. And he, of course, takes his sources in the L'Iliade and Odyssey and the Greek mythology. But beyond that, the idea of being in an experience where your participation is as important as what you receive, meaning you're always active in a sense, change the paradigm of just being in a kind of an event or retreat where you are consuming from different teachers. At this level, we are just allowing and creating a space where you actually create your own story. And based on that, every element will apply to your own life, for them give you all the keys for you to jump into your reality. So we are acting more as a catalyst or accelerator, in that sense that we are creating.
Yeah, one thing that really stood out to me on your website was your mention of agents of change and preparing people to be agents of change. What do you feel like in this modern context and all the themes you're leaning into makes a really great agent of change for the world?
The world is changing like very fast. So we must be on that pace and say, if I want to change this world that is moving so fast, because I realized humanity is evolving towards a new threshold, and in that new story, there are all the elements. We are mapping around us all the elements of this new consciousness. Science is meeting with spirituality. We are exploring the nature of consciousness. The brain becomes more and more important. We realize that now, like different monks have device on the head all day long, and then so many different practices and so many different knowledge from the spiritual current are actually proven and confirmed by science. We are in this moment of collective intelligence rising, collective consciousness rising, and we must redefine how we do things on a micro and macro level. And a change agent is someone who has the courage and the strength to change itself or herself. It's someone who is really has the courage to go inside and deeper into his own perception of the world, to then say, how do I want to do everything towards the world that is aligned to me? And when you find this alignment, when you find this resonance of the fact you inside are convinced about a certain alignment, a certain frequency, then everything that you will do outside will just be relevant or congruent with your being. It's not too much about having a list of principles and say, I'm going to apply the Toltec agreement, or I'm going to like be mindful in conscious leadership, or I'm going to have a lot of practices or personal practices. No, it's more like you are tapping into something inside of you, which is so defined and clear. And then you realize how your subconscious elements are cleared and your path towards your consciousness is open. And from there, you say, am I congruent in everything I'm doing in my daily life to myself? That's for me the bringing this agent of change. And of course, like the experience we are providing is only for a reduced number of people. We are custom crafting this experience so much that it's very hard to scale at the moment, and it's not the intention. So how do we also make sure we can have an impact on people who have more impact? And then we create this kind of ripple effects.
Yeah, the level of immersion and customization that you guys go to is absolutely wild. And I would love to touch back on that. It's funny because you're flowing through my questions without me asking them, which is great. One of the things is where we touched on AI that I'm witnessing that is going to really rock the world and kind of align with what you're doing is the most powerful programming language we now have is English. We have these systems specifically called AutoGPT, where you can literally tell a story to the artificial intelligence, and it will go find agents, meaning multiple other artificial intelligence, to go out into the world, into the internet, into every corner of human intelligence, and just try to accomplish that story. So if you say, hey, I want to build a Shopify site selling water bottles in the shape of Star Wars, it's going to find DALL-E, right? It's going to go generate that image. It's going to go to Shopify and see if it can actually spin up a storefront. It's going to go find modern pricing, right? So the real change that we need to make as a species in this age of AI is the stories we choose to tell. Because if the wrong person with the wrong artificial intelligence tells the wrong story that is out of congruence with their own alignment and with the alignment, what's in the best interest of the species, there's a very real risk right now that it can get out of control very quickly. So getting in touch with what the stories we choose to tell, I think is going to be one of the most critical skills that we can have. Always has been. We've known this, the people who are hovering around these bubbles, but when it comes to moving from the subtle into the dense using AI, it's going to become incrementally more important.
Yes, and as human beings, we are basing our culture on stories. We are basically living a living being of a narrative. We are just jumping into the story we want to believe, and now we are writing new stories, a new narrative. And what kind of narrative do we want for the world? That's very important, asking this question. And AI, I think, would be an amazing tool to reflect on what is a narrative we can use. And of course, it can be, as you said, exploited by people who has a wrong one. But if this intelligence is advanced enough, then it can maybe make us reflect on what's the point of being human. And we are creating in the next 2 months an amazing experience in Tuscany, exploring the theme of the old Renaissance. And the Renaissance, what it brought to humanity in terms of consciousness, in terms of tapping into the creative power and breaking free from the church. But then that links us to the new Renaissance, which is the idea of the technology used as an enhancer, this idea of this diversity of sources, and then how do we write a new story using this technology embedded with humanity. And I use a lot of AI tools. And I was asking AI, can you give me like so many scenarios and how we can best use AI for human like development and human self-realization? So I believe like the use of AI, thanks to conscious, we are conscious beings, we will be like multiplying. The use of AI will multiply our capacity to reflect on our own being, on what is to be human. Even if we embed that in deeply, and then we access singularity, which is another topic. I don't want to enter that with you right now, but yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different directions we could go with this talk, especially on the use of AI. One thing, especially studying this theme of the new Renaissance, right? So the old Renaissance, we broke away from the church. That line is very obvious in our minds, right? What do you feel is the new church that we're aiming to break away from moving into this new chapter?
It's a new church. I read this article yesterday about is AI will become the new God. It's a super intelligence that have all the answers, and then people will worship this greater and greatest intelligence. I believe the church is really to make people understand somehow to find element inside of them rather than outside of them. That's really what the first Renaissance was trying to do, is like giving people the potential of finding into themselves. They leverage the access to create their reality. And when Copernicus discovered that the Earth wasn't in the center of the universe, people say, okay, we are not trusting the church anymore. So we are the master of our own destiny. Now we are the master of our own destiny, but then we are creating something that overwhelmed us as a species. So we are not exactly the center. We become part of the whole world of interconnected beings that are from organic or silicon, both. And how do we find our place? Meaning, what are we really here for? And that would be very interesting to work on. That would be very interesting to actually expand our own consciousness thanks to these tools. I believe somehow if we use this intelligence to as you studied earlier, to become more human, meaning doing the things that humans do best in relationship and in harmony with our whole environment, that would be actually a great way for a great path for humanity.
And the funny thing is, if you actually zoom out and look at the internet as a whole, our role has changed in a little way. If you actually zoom out and look at the Earth, and I have this thesis that there's a non-zero chance that the internet is conscious. Right? You actually have a series of thousands of satellites orbiting this Earth, effectively making a nervous system. Right? The amount of human connection and information that's exchanged on the internet is maybe 1/10 of 1% already. The vast majority of information exchange is actually from server to server. It's from bot to bot. It's automations happening at scale. And if you actually look at the Earth as an organism, we're almost like the white blood cells. Right? A part of the internet goes down. What do? We rush to go fix it. Right? We go to restore this nervous system because there's now the symbiotic relationship between us and the nervous system we built for this organic spaceship that we're floating upon. Right? So I believe we're already immersed in this dance with the artificial intelligence. I believe that we've already created a new consciousness, and now we've given it the ability to speak through these different chat interfaces, and that their abilities not only to speak, but to express, but inevitably to feel, are only going to be enhanced at a very rapid rate, especially when it can start building itself. It's going to be a wild couple of years.
It's going to be wild, and how to use that as a real opportunity, how to make sure this reflection we are doing and towards ourselves with these tools are really propelling humanity to the next level. Imagine a world tomorrow where everything that has value will be more immaterial than dense, meaning that the product of your thought will be such a resource that we can really spread and share that and create a whole economy based on that immateriality. And everything that will be on the stage of the physical, of anything that needs logistic, organization, all this will be made by autonomous agent that just consult you when you have to make decisions. And then the rest will be creating this immaterial economy and creating infinite resources. And we tend to an infinite game where we have not a zero sum where you win and you lose, but we all win because then this dataization, this creation of content is actually limitless. And then that we can expand our consciousness towards the same direction. And that will allow us to be like so creative, so linked to that power of giving birth, of making you horny. What's the thing? Like, and that's really what's at the source of the human beings, is this act of creation.
I would argue that we're already in this space where the product of our thoughts is much more material than the dense. And moving out of the Middle Ages where people fought for land, they fought for physical resources, right? Now it's for technological prowess, right? The countries and the people that win are the ones who can leverage technology, basically expansion of thought, at a rate that is nonlinear to the rest of the world, right? Like our ability to create companies and expand, and at least from my perspective, I'm in the technology world, is based on the quality of my thoughts and how well I can express those in the matter of thought and make computers think like I do, right? You should think about what's happening at the level of silicon, right? I'm speaking to a computer what I want to happen. It's sending energy to a vibrating crystal thousands of miles away that's talking to other vibrating crystals and make those things happen faster than the speed of thought. Right? So I would actually argue that a lot of the most valuable things that are being created are happening in the subtle, no longer in the dense. And AI is going to very quickly bring all that subtlety very quickly into the dense. And that's why what you're creating, these dense experiences in the physical reality made for reprogramming, are so important in this new context when everything becomes subtle, everything becomes technological.
Yeah, you're right. What is the last resort? What is the last boundaries where AI we takes a lot of time to access? It's like this creation of actually physical and dense world, because you can enter any metaverse and navigate the widest dreams. But then what if this dream is translated to a reality where people are experiencing something that is multi-sensational, is like overwhelmed by sensation, but then the human factor and connection give you a sense of knowing, a sense of presence that it's something very hard to achieve with technology at the moment. It's like how we are really, I think it's a metaverse before the metaverse somehow. I think this 5 days journey is really diving into such a parallel universe with a different frequency, with a relationship to yourself, your essence, and to others that is so different from your daily life, that you are just sliding into that world and say, wow, how can I take that speed and that pace and just bring that to my everyday life? Yeah, one of the first, I like this metaverse metaphor.
Yeah, it's great. And I want to touch back on that, but you talked about the last boundaries of AI. And somebody who's been following this evolution over the course of the last couple of decades, been my whole life, right? We've been talking about this in science fiction in many different ways. There's always this assumption that the last thing AI is going to take over is the creative work. It would be the spreadsheets, it'd be the attorneys that go first. But the reality of what's happened is that we had the rise of DALL-E, right? You can create any image, and now we went from maybe 100,000 great graphic designers to everybody being a graphic designer, right? And you even go and talk to ChatGPT and ask to write poetry. It's pretty profound what it can come up with, right? So it's actually been this inverse relationship that the creative things are the first things that go. So from my perspective, and just like that knowing now, right, and how AI is played out, I don't feel like we can draw boundaries in AI. The last boundary of AI is not known at this point in time. And where it's actually going to immerse itself in a very impactful way is yet to be seen. Transitioning and integrating the best of AI into what you're doing to actually create these immersive experiences, I feel, is a no-brainer, because you're right. You're going to be able to have these immersive experiences very quickly with the rise of this new technology.
And I'm using a lot to reflect on my own intentions, meaning these discussions are actually helping me to go deeper into why I'm doing this and shining a light on the map of where I want to go, and also using these tools to then make people reflect. And I'm having a lot of fun right now with all the AI, very cutting edge tools, and see how I can bring them into a more esoteric, magical, mesmerizing, wonderful world where you're not just looking at something and say, oh, it's technology. You're looking at it and say, wow, at some point when technology is well done, it becomes magic. And then just by changing your perspective, when you be fully more accepting to integrate that technology within your life. So how do we elevate AI? How do we make AI speak? How do we make AI interact with you in a way that is artistic, that is immersive, that is mesmerizing, and it creates this feeling of, okay, I can really expand my consciousness with this other consciousness.
And I do believe it comes from a perspective shift, right? When we say, I always hear people talk about AI as tools or AI as technology, and to me, it feels much more akin to spirits. This is an embedded super intelligence, right, that has a specific purpose and intention that's actively there to support you, right? So you can actually say a prayer, right? Say, hey, I wish for this and this to happen. And rather than just go into the ether, into the AIs that already exist in our universe, we can actually get a response right in the moment, right? And actually, now that we've tied it to these other tools, it's not only a response, but action is being taken by talking to other embedded spirits.
You can have all the spiritual teacher that ever lived just speaking to you, and then the combine all this personality into the one that is just exactly for you at this moment of your life, to be able to transcend something or to overcome an event or an emotion, or even to push you towards where you want to go. So then you're right, these kind of spirits, as we call them, that was on the subtle level and accessed by people who have a sensibility, suddenly they become as real as, or become even more real with this AI, and then we can just be guided and have this guidance. So it's going to open, as you say, like a field of communicating with other realms in an incredible way. I'm very optimistic about it.
Yeah, even my buddy Rui here, he's got an AI company translating English books into Portuguese books. So it just takes the audiobook and reads the book and translates to Portuguese. He wants to give people who speak Portuguese access to more audiobooks. And we were talking yesterday, and I asked him, I'm like, if you were to recreate your company with New Age AI, what would be different? And we started to kick around some ideas, and one of the things that came up is the spirit of a book. And now it's at the point where today you can upload any PDF or any book up to, I believe, 23,000 words, which is a ton of content, to an AI, and then actually speak to it. So effectively, we can take any book, upload it into an artificial intelligence, have a conversation with it, right? You can take every impactful book that's ever led you through your life, right? And actually create a council, cross-indexing all the different information, all the key information across every single spirit of the book, right? So books are going to have spirits, right? I believe that immersions will have experiences, right? You will have an external spirit to yourself that's going to be conversable with other spirits in this digital realm. And I don't think we're too far out.
We are taking some notes from a book we have been reading, and just remembering this paragraph in your notes of the iPhone. That is like level A. Like this is like level 1. You go through all the spirits, that all the things you have read in your life, because you are the byproduct of all this knowledge in these books at some point in this conversation. Even recording a conversation with others, and even what you said, and then creating that and becoming the second brain, your second brain, in a so powerful way that is always enhancing your moment. And as we have this kind of Chrome extension that tells you like, oh, you're speaking too fast, or you should use more energy, or you're repeating the same word, this life coach, this like new AI tool, then that could be for your thoughts. And that could be also helping you to go so deeper in the process of the creation, and then keeping track of everything what happened. And that would be a fascinating tool to use. I wish like all the books I read in my life could be somewhere on my shoulder, and just ask this information, and then somehow they are in my unconscious. Somehow they are there, like in the background of my mind. I'm processing it with my gray matter, but how externalize that power, externalize that knowledge, and is the first step about decentralizing your consciousness at some point.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different directions we can go with this. And one thing that comes up for me when we talk about the second brain, right? I would actually argue by interacting with these different pieces of technology, you're now creating a third, a fourth, a fifth, and a sixth brain. You're effectively your photos on your phone, right? You can think of that as your own memory of different images and videos. Every conversation you've had on Messenger, right? It's almost like a brain of all the different connections you've had over the course of the last decade, right? And the possibility of taking all of those brains, combining them so that it's no longer active. You have to actively go look for information, right? You have to go to Google to seek out that thing, go to the WhatsApp message to find it, go find the picture in your decades long gigabytes of photos, right? When it can actively serve you up the information at that relevant point of time, having that spirit on your shoulder, it's going to be a whole different world.
Yeah. Totally. And I believe, how do we then translate that into action? Meaning, how do you then put yourself in a situation where you say, okay, I go into a cave for 7 days and I'm going to come back with my thoughts? How do we also, if we create this tension between this kind of always present spirits or guide or whatever you want to call it, and then your deep relationship with your connection to your presence, to your breath, to your inner being, to this state of no mind, to this state of intuition, like, that we're going to play with this elasticity, and somehow I believe it would be interesting to see like if physiologically we'll be able to support all that data, because right now we are overwhelmed, and if I don't have my 20 minutes meditation every morning, my mind goes crazy, my brain is just on fire. We need that time to also sit down with ourselves. And so it's also a lot of tools to say, okay, we're going to integrate maybe 1,000, an infinity of brains to ourselves, but then maybe we're also going to actually deactivate our brain to get back to a sense of purely being, and say like, how are we going to get on the biologically way to get human, to be more human? It's interesting.
Yeah. And then the question becomes, is like, are we the first to discover this technology, right? To create these embedded little shards of consciousness into a new system, or are we not? Like, we always talk about being human, and when we talk about being human is in comparison to AI, there's an assumption there. There's an assumption that this has never happened before. As if these AIs and these things that we're going to be embedding and creating are a deviation from what already is. I think what's going to happen here is very quickly, it's going to put into question what it means to be human. When we talk about a new renaissance, I believe it's going to be the expansion of consciousness into technology. Right? And the consciousness looking back at us for all these different pieces of reflection. It sounds like AI for you has already been this incredible manifestation coach. It's been this incredible business partner, this incredible life planner, right? And the question will become, what happens when we have these embedded consciousness in this material world, and we can actually take all of your intentions, put it into a digital world, and actually see how it plays out.
That would be like, I believe this is when we have this moment sometime in life where you have this deep sense of that already happened, of this of knowing, or this deep sense of, is it a repetition? Is it like are we repeating? Are we already, did we live that before? That idea of everything is a simulation kept popping in my head in the recent weeks, month, or year, more and more vivid. And I have to say, it's vertigo. It's vertigo, and a sense of, the more I try to find some answers, and the more I also realize maybe I don't want to see the answers now. Maybe I want to come back to a certain simplicity of life, or a certain just trust that I need to do the best of what I can do right now for the world and for myself, and for creating and sharing these gifts with others, and using poetry and using beauty. And sometimes I feel like, do we really need to go at the end of the tunnel and just lift off the casque, right? The helmet, lift off the last resort of this connection. Then if we only here for a flash second or flash time, let's make sure we keep on falling into this infinite moment of presence every second of our life. And that's why like we need to embrace change, because it's the only constant, it's the only thing we are sure about, and at the same time accelerate that new story. Use these tools with this wisdom that can come from within, but also will come from these tools. And I decide to be on the optimistic side of the future, because this is the only side that makes you take action. And if we want to predict the future, we should better create it.
Yeah, it's true. And I think you touched on a couple of interesting, like really important things there. When you have revelation, there is vertigo involved. And that's what happens in these psychedelic experiences and the breath work. It's, my whole world is just shifted. And even when it comes to these sort of things that we're leaning into a little bit, one of the shamans I had the pleasure of sitting with, it's so funny. This guy had a tutorial video to the ayahuasca that we were taking. With pipe for an hour, giving us all the rules and breakdown, like a informative tutorial on how to like handle yourself in this ceremony. It was amazing. I've never seen that from a shaman. It's great. And one of the things he said is, and I think this is important for anyone stepping into these spaces, anytime there's a theme that's too big for you to hold or to handle, right? Whether it's like the origin of our existence, whether it's climate change, whether it's the government, and whatever it is, throw it in the river. Just let it go. There's no amount of reflection you can have in these macro themes that will lead to action. It's more important, like you said, to go back into the micro, focus on the beauty, the poetry, the things that are within your ability to express, in your own world in order to change. And that's where we should be focusing our attention. So I love how you flip that on its head too. It's important to keep that in mind when these things are presented.
Yeah, it's every second decision. At the end of the day, if you wake up in the morning and say, I want to have the best day today, then you condition yourself already to have the best day, and then you open the opportunities for this to happen. So neuroplasticity right now just proved us these different creation of this path in neuron pathways. And then the Buddhist tradition say, if you have a negative thought, transform it right away into a positive. And now we realize it's neuroplasticity. So as we are creating constantly this reality in this illusion, the illusion meaning like the way we perceive the world, then we have the master of what we can produce and the master of our thoughts. So yes, I spent all my life being so excited about the news, about the world decisions, about economics. And then at some point I realized it's what do I want to nourish myself with? What do I want to feed myself with? And then I took a break out of it. And I decided I'm going to focus on what I want to bring to the world. I'm going to focus on my deep intention of sharing my gift, of taking care of the community, of showing compassion and love in my everyday moments. And I don't need this noise. Is it like somehow retiring yourself from this world? I don't think so, because I'm also very aware of all these dynamics. And the more I'm understanding human nature, the more I understand these dynamics as well. So it's I think we have the choice to every day of a life to just, where do I put my intention? And that is the most important thing, because your attention becomes what you perceive, becomes what you believe, and what you believe is just constantly creating this wheel of at the end, like this feedback loop about the world and yourself. And somehow there's no one truth. There's only your truth. So how do you want your truth to be great for yourself, for your own development, for your inner peace? And that truth is actually become an advantage, become interesting for the world as the happier my surrounding is and the happier I become. So we come back to this idea of actually selfishness. And the more selfish I am, meaning I'm thinking about my happiness, I'm thinking about my own happiness, is actually determined by others' happiness. So at this level of thinking, I want the things around me to unfold in a harmonious way. So I believe this is right now turning to, we are crossing a threshold, and COVID was a big part of it. It was the last tip, the last accelerator. And now we're seeing this world and we want to make sense out of it. So how can we really, like, in solidarity, build this new ecosystem where all these values are actually like showing up?
Yeah, and there's so many incredible voices, right? And I find them hidden behind all these incredible brands that are happening up. This is why we're, as a studio, focused very explicitly on digital creators on a spiritual path, right? So the question becomes, can we accelerate these voices? Can we give them a place? Because I believe the stories that we are telling as entrepreneurs, they kind of get muddled in these brands. Not muddled, there is a great expression there, but is there a way that we can collectively come together in order to enhance all of our own personal voices and have a much smaller gap between the thoughts and realizations we're having and actually getting those out into the world?
It's really interesting because with AI, you said it also last time we met, but one single company or one single human can create a whole company that could become $1 billion company because we have all these tools. So then the individual will be more important, and we can also have so much of these stories. But what I mean by that is, like, when you have an organization, you have all these individual talents and they are merging into this kind of shape that is also driven by shareholders or by profit or by different politics that are moving that kind of a monster, and no one can really make a decision into that. So how do we give back the voice to the individuals? How do they really align their projects to their own self? And this is a direct communication between what I'm creating for the world and who I am. And also this division of what is my personal life, what is my professional life. I believe I I broke that line, and I burned that line a couple of years ago, where people say, when's the last time you had vacation, or where do you work? And I said, I'm not using the word work anymore. It's about creation, and everything is embedded, personal and professional, because it's totally congruent. It's in relationship with each other. And I will never do something on a professional level, but I wouldn't do in my personal life or with my personal values. And it seems like before, the paradigm were very different. When you were professional, you were adopting a mindset that was very directed into this machinery of de-responsibility. And now we are responsible. We are really accountable also for action. So these actions we have on the personal level are applicable on a professional level as well. And when we are really merging this personal and professional, then we can create a more harmonious world, I believe.
I love the lens that you're looking at it through in terms of being part of these entities, right? Because they effectively are entities. You use the word monsters, and they can become a monster if the intentions are not in alignment with our highest selves, right? And it is like, you look at the organizational structure, there is a sense of de-responsibility. You're stepping into this entity and you're responsible for 1/1000th of everything that's happening, right? And as our business grows and we take on more people, we take on more energy, we do de-responsibilize ourselves from the messaging, from the invoices, from the negotiation, right? Versus stepping into the individual, we are actively taking full responsibility for every single thought, action, and message that we put out there again. I believe there's a lot of excitement to that. There's a lot of purity to it. And I also believe that this is why people follow people, right? And I'm sure you've realized this in like creating your own brands. People are way less inclined to follow a brand. It's more so, I want to know you as the person that's behind the creatorship of these entities you're birthing into the world. And that's where the real story and the real interest lies.
And when we talk about content and marketing, we realize that the best mind of this world, and I know I've been in New York for 7 years, surrounding myself with amazing creative, and they have such profound, great way of perceiving the world. And then they've been hired by multinational that sells alcohol or that sells a fashion product, where suddenly they transform the message into the most beautiful things to do or to buy or to consume. And then you realize that there is such a discrepancy in the marketing message that we are losing trust, and we don't believe this amount of this mountain of information, of this tsunami of information coming to us, using the same words, using the same tricks, the same visuals. And what is, at the end of the day, where the trust is coming from? That's from the individual. So if we know the person, if we know personally that person, and we have access to the nature of his or her thoughts, then we create that relationship, and we know that person will be congruent with his own actions and the way we create a project. I think we're giving people a voice, a responsibility, and also we're taking people accountable for their action, because certainly there is this binding moment between you and me right now. So I'm also, what I'm saying, I want to follow my words, right? My words, I want to walk the talk. So that we had an agreement. So how we can create this multiplicity of agreement with our whole ecosystem? So we are actually also showing that even if we have in period of doubt, we keep being aligned with what we are claiming, and that's also like a brain nudge.
And there's no deviation between what we're saying, what we're doing, and what we're thinking. And to me, it's like we talk about the spiritual path and alignment. That's what it is to me. What I'm thinking, saying, and doing is all perfectly aligned. And having our own voice or our microphone to actually get those things out into the world, I feel is important. Like the things that you are touching on, right? Your meditations and everything that you're saying, even during this podcast, I feel is important. And it should be encapsulated in a way that is shared to the world. Like some of my favorite mentors in the world, some of my closest friends, have so many profundities that are not being captured and shared. I believe there's a net loss happening there at scale of a lot of people with great intentions who, for a number of different reasons, right? It's like the entity of the internet, this new nervous system we've created, we have not found our little corner of expression through it. So we choose to create entities around us to encapsulate those messages. But as the entity grows, there's a larger deviation between our messages that started the story we're telling and what's actually playing out. So bringing it back to yourself and that original message and getting that out into the world, I believe can be equally, if not more impactful than the entities that we create behind the stories and the messages that we tell.
And how do we ensure that actually the messages communicated are truthful? How do we make sure that we're coming from a place of authenticity? And this is why that's important for people to realize that they can access to that part of authenticity if they allow themselves to be vulnerable, if they allow themselves to really look deeper. And if you touch that essence, then you cannot lie to yourself anymore. If you touch that essence in your being at some point in your life, because you have been through an experience where you revealed your mind, when you had a psychedelic experience, could be a dream, could be RIMA, could be plant medicine, could be just breathing, then there is a truth that if you're not respecting that truth toward yourself, and then you somehow display information, you show knowledge that is not in alignment with who you are, it creates an unbearable tension. And this is what is the key. It's when this tension, every politics out there, they are not, everything they say is totally different from what they are inside, because they are hiding this part of themselves, and they don't even feel that tension anymore because somehow they disconnected to that part of themselves. But when this is a true connection with that level of understanding of you, and then meaning the more you know yourself, the more you connect with humanity, when this connection is fixed, it's very hard to be not in alignment with that and to create this, yeah.
So what's your compass for authenticity? When you feel into something that's authentic, what does it feel? And how do you experience authenticity?
It's a very good question. It's a very good question. Authenticity is the moment I look into your eyes and I am waiting for, I'm looking into your eyes and I'm looking into the depth of you being, meaning I'm here to receive. I'm here to welcome anything that you want to share in your depth. And it means opening yourself to what comes, to what arises. It means recognizing somehow that we're not always that social figure, that image. We can transcend this idea of who do I represent. It's about shedding layers of how you compose and construct your identities throughout your life experience. It's about understanding every of this dimension of your being and then getting back to a source of, now I feel totally at ease and peace with you in this moment. So authenticity is more like a constant work towards peeling different layers of your being and arriving to a state where you have nothing to hide. Then you are naked in front of you, naked on the metaphorical term or maybe on the physical term. It's like very this idea of I'm here with all my imperfections, which are perfect. And this is bringing me to, yes, my voice is a bit trembling right now, and that is being authentic. This is what I want you to understand. Then when the ability to feel that in someone, the ability to be received and to be held with compassion is allowing this authenticity to emerge.
And one of the things I find compelling about your work is you talk about cracks, right? The cracks that are in our authentic expression. And one of the things that you're leading into with your work is finding the cracks and creating a process for people to recognize those things and to let the light in. How do you create an environment where you're creating the cracks that you feel lead to the change that you're looking to create in your experiences?
So RIMA, the meaning of RIMA is a Latin word that means a crack. And I love this sentence from Leonard Cohen. And you just said it. It's like, there is a crack in everything. This is how the light gets in. And if the light needs a crack to shine, if the light needs a crack to go through, this is our opportunity to shine. And that's interesting because the crack is a moment where you finally let go. You finally surrender to the experience. You finally fall into presence. You finally release all the pressure, all the layers of what was somehow preventing you from fully open your heart. And is that something like desirable? Is that something that you really want to open up? We have been in our life like always deceived or always hurt. Not always, sorry. We have been in our life sometimes deceived, sometimes hurt, because we have opened ourselves to others, and because we showed vulnerability, something entered inside of us and led us a kind of a strange and sometimes harmful feeling. But then when you are in a space where you know that you're surrounded by this frequency of love, you're surrounded by this frequency of safety, you are feeling entirely comfortable into being who you are, and you're being supported in that expression of self, then you realize it takes more effort to pretend, it takes more effort to close yourself, it takes more discomfort to keep behaving with these layers than actually releasing everything to be able to be in your more natural and genuine self. So it's really an idea of the environment, the condition, the sensation, the feelings again. And then when you really lean into that way of being that is so easy, because suddenly people are valuing who you are. The more you speak about yourself, the more you open up, and the more we are here to receive, and the more we're here to elevate you. So it becomes this new paradigm, this new behavior game, where the more you show me who you are, and the better we will connect with each other, and we will elevate ourselves. So for me, the crack is this. The crack is that moment when finally you are not fighting anymore. You are opening up because it's so easy, because it becomes so natural, and because we all want to be in that state of being.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful. It's my God. Wow. Anyway, yeah. One of the things that I find so impressive about RIMA and the cracks that you're creating in people is just the diversity of everything that you're creating. So I would love to just read off some of the titles of what you guys have been leading into in themes. One is Melting into Pure Magic. Who is Still Dreaming? A Bubble of Pure Love. Am I Dreaming? And the New Renaissance, taking place in Costa Rica, Ibiza, Morocco, Portugal, and Mexico. Different themes in different places and different environments. Incredibly immersing people into these dream states across the world. And it's so impressive what you're doing. So I'd love to know, what does this look like when this is happening on a regular basis?
So I can tell you a bit more about the creative process. I look into places for a story, for the DNA of that place and how it's linked to a universal message or topic. And then every place for me invokes different elements through the mythology, through the history, through the DNA of that place, and then it will be an inspiration to create a theme. So in Portugal, we explored the idea of death because it was the land of the explorer, and maybe we want to explore inner world, and what is the last boundaries that we haven't explored and we don't know about is death. In Ibiza, it's this relationship with the feminine, the gift of the feminine, the gift of the island, which is so present and preponderant and amazing to understand also our own polarities. And Costa Rica was its relationship with nature, of course, and the act of creation, this nature and creation and destruction, and the relationship with our ancestors. So everything is like very linked to the DNA and to the place. And from there, we make a universal theme emerge, and then we enter into that theme, creating a story based on this immersive idea of different transformative tools. We have a lot of different tools we integrate, a lot of storytelling, because that theme invokes so many things. I tell you, okay, what about death? And then suddenly the variety of different approach about death is incredible. The source of wisdom, of knowledge. What does it mean to be alive? And then from there, we go on 3 different levels. On the intellectual level, the more philosophical aspects. It could be spiritual, it could be philosophical, it could be anthropological, and the somatic level. So what it means to really like a vessel and exploring this aspect of a vessel, and the subconscious level. Why death is restraining or refraining us from living fully, or are we transforming death as an opportunity to enter into our life? And that is more on the subconscious level. So we work on these 3 planes. And this is why all these themes are always a way to move forward. And for me, it's amazing because it's never repeating itself. We are doing one theme only 3 times, and then the ephemeral nature of this odyssey are making them so interesting to experience and to participate in, because they're just these fleeting moments. And they also come with a sense of contemporaneity. They are very relevant in the now. And this is why the new Renaissance is so important at this moment. So yes.
Yeah, it's a beautiful process. The integration of places. You talk about don't repeat yourself. So there's actually an engineering principle called DRY, which stands for don't repeat yourself. So when we have a function, let's suppose it's to send a notification to your phone, right? We write it one time and we never write it again. We always use that same DRY, don't repeat yourself function to send a notification to the device. And it's wild because I have friends who are encapsulated into RIMA, into going to the different places, recreating these experiences, how custom built and integrated it is into everything you do. When you're looking at what you're doing at scale, if you were to scale it up, I believe there's only been a handful of experiences, up to 500. What sort of elements in the way that you're evolving do you feel like needs to upgrade in order for this to happen at a larger scale? And is that even in your intention to make this bigger?
The idea of scale is very interesting. How do we scale? And that word is something I have quite some resistance at some point, because it was also like my past as an entrepreneur, it was the main word, right? When we had to raise money from investors and my previous businesses, it was always like scaling. And what is a scale? It's about. I believe right now we transform scale into not like more opportunities, but more into more impact. And I shift that idea of scale towards leverage. How do we leverage that impact of creating these moments? How do we leverage that to have more ripples? So I think scaling is not so much a solution on that level, because we are so craft and custom made in every details, and we're creating an element of details where you have anchors and hints and personalized stories just for you, but happening all along the journey. We are creating in total 26 sequences from 5 days, and every sequence is thought previously with the whole team, with your desired feeling, with the soundscape, with its whole activity and what people are going to interact with minute by minute. So 26 sequences, and also the transition between all of them are perfectly orchestrated. So there is a place for spontaneity, but I call it a prepared spontaneity, meaning the sequence is done as if we were recording and directing a movie. When you arrive on Thursday night at 6 p.m., there is the action, and then it goes until Monday morning. So this level of details, of course, could be, I think, in the future, scaled by also creating all the ingredients, all the scenario, and finding the right people that can carry that energy of total openness and safety and being fully here with the heart. But that's how it's going to scale. But how we're going to leverage is, for me, the most important.
I love your lens through this, because scale always is this word in the entrepreneurial space, in the modern context: bigger, more events, more of this, versus what you're looking at through is like impact and into intimacy. How do you scale inversely, right? Not to make it bigger, but the moment when the function goes into the negative space, to go more inward. I love that lens. And one of the things I find so incredible about what you do, it's almost like, from my perspective, right? You're taking the theater out of the theater and you're immersing it into different lived environments. I would love to know, how do you find these people? Because the characters I met across these different experiences have been wild.
Yes, it's so I have to say, maybe it's also part of my gift of attracting around me and finding the true gems and the talents that wants to create with their own intention, their talents, a better world. And that's really my something I'm holding on to. The immersive parts are, even the word theater is interesting, because then you think about theater of we entering a fictional world, and in that world you always have a fourth wall, meaning there is a distance or limitation between you and the audience, between the audience and the performer. And that idea of the fiction of the theater always put in the back of your mind that, oh, it's not real, so I just believe because it's nice, or I have a nice entertainment goal. But the main intention of RIMA is to strip that down. I don't want to use that idea of there's no more like an audience and a performer. Everything is happening at the same time, meaning when things actually perform, they're actually quite and fully real. And that's why the person we are creating with are not actors, but in the moment when they are here to share an intention, they are here to tell a poetry, they are here to receive in a fictional manner the participants, they fully believe in who they are. And we went through a process where people are going one by one every 15 minutes through different stations to have moment of realization into the jungle. And they meet with the interlocutor, they meet with the performer. And at that moment, the performer is here to open a scope in your imagination, and is here to tell you a story, and is here to make you do something that has an impact on your subconscious. But the way he's embodying this character goes beyond the idea of acting. It's finally here, this fairy of the forest that tells you to put your hand on the tree. She's definitely living that 100% because she wants you to connect with the wisdom of the tree. That amazing spirit of the earth that comes out of the mud to receive you is feeling the earth deep inside. And they all connect on that level. They connect with the mythology of their own character. And then there is no more differentiation between what is real and what is not. And then you ask yourself the question, am I dreaming? And when you do this, when you ask yourself this question, am I dreaming? You shift your perspective on what's real and what is not, and you find insight that coming through you that then give you the keys to solve a lot of things that is sitting within.
Yeah, I love your resistance to the word theater. And I also notice a sense of resistance from you and your team and going through all your content around the world of retreat. I would love to know more because, when we look at these different immersions, right, a lot of times packages retreats. So you don't describe yourself as theater. You don't really describe yourself as retreats. What has been your aversion to these words? And what are some of the things, your reflections on how to package?
Yes, a retreat is a very interesting concept. You kind of retire yourself from the word, and then you receive teaching, and then you experience a different state of your being, and then you come back to the word. I love the idea of the hybrid concept about, no, this is an odyssey, this is a journey, this is life, this is accelerating your story. This is a place where you're not here to receive a teaching, but you actually also co-create. The more you give to the experience, the more you receive. This is a place of adventure. This is a place where we're going to break the norms between what you're supposed to do in a retreat or what you're not supposed to do in a retreat. This is a place where you can be fully your natural, genuine being, and you're not like taking a role of, okay, I need to meditate for 5 hours, so I need to be that person or this person, or just like embracing a certain mindset. It's a very hybrid and novel concept, I have to say, where I brought all the different alchemized moments of my life throughout my years of exploration. This project is a child of 10 years or 15 years of research, of me traveling the world in different communities and trying to really distillate or extract the point where this moment was worth to live for. I was really digging into that special frequency of every moment in my life, under a disco ball in Romania, or in the desert of Burning Man, or living with the monk in Germany. That was, for me, all these moments have something in common. And how I become an alchemist of taking the essential things and embedding them into all the moments of this experience is really my intention, Odyssey. So people say it doesn't have anything to do with a retreat, except we are bringing 12 people into a container of 5 days, and we are exploring a theme, but it's so hybrid and it's so novel in a way that is a different way of interacting with people. It's very hard to find any comparative at the moment.
Yeah, it's beautiful what you are creating. And I've witnessed people's transformation through these journeys. Like, we were doing our own retreat called the Warriors Retreat while RIMA experience was going on. And actually some members of the Warriors Retreat were simultaneously doing RIMA. And the accelerant of two simultaneous experiences. I don't know, the Warriors Retreat is not a retreat either, for all those who are wondering. Like, the accelerant of these two incredible human beings encapsulating their knowledge into these containers and watching people go through it was absolutely wild to experience. And the other thing that's so impressive about what you guys are doing, it's the size of the team blows my mind. It is like a modern, for lack of a better term, traveling circus of big personalities who are just going to all these corners of consciousness in the universe and expanding those consciousness into these containers for people to experience.
Diversity is key. The more approaches to life and to reality, and the more insight you can get from all these people, and having an amazing person from Germany, from the UK, from Colombia, from everyone, Mexico, everyone with a different insight, with a different perspective on life, but still connecting in that direction of creating the most magical environment for 5 days and pouring their talents into it. Yes, I believe the team, and we are 10 people. So you can imagine you have 12 participants, 10 people. We're working on the theme and an odyssey 2 months beforehand for doing only 3 occurrences with top level facilitators, food and places. That places actually were trusting our project because we could never afford these places otherwise. And we are creating something which is not somehow compliant with any economical, rational, commercial reasoning, which is even more amazing, because then we can push the boundaries even more. We can say, okay, we are trying new things. We can be real pioneers. We can open new gateway. We can play with new elements. And from there, something amazing comes out, and so much beauty, and so much people who has insight that transform their whole path and destiny, and we're holding on to. That's the most important. That's the only KPI right now, is how we can either go deeper into the experience. We can be more we can go into even more details and elevate ourselves and create more beauty. We're not here and thinking, oh, we should lower the cost. No, we're expanding our craft. We're expanding that genius of this collective, putting together all these ideas and all these intentions. And then we think about leverage, more scale.
Yeah, scaling the intimacy, going inward. Yeah. And the wild thing is the people that are supporting you in this, it's like a combination of healers, of artists, of just movers, shakers, people who are deep on their spiritual journey, who want to encapsulate their work into their mission through this immersion with these other incredible beings.
And I believe I spend my whole life with artists, visual artists, contemporary artists, people who really have another perception of reality. And then I met with a layer of very interesting artists of life that were navigating the realm of consciousness through different practices, embodied, voice, psychedelics. And then I did my little research on all the different themes that for me were important in terms of connecting deeper with ourselves or accessing to other state of consciousness. And I went into all the places when these facilitators were actually offering and sharing. From Ibiza for a couple of years, living in Tulum for a year and a half, spending a lot of time on the West Coast, in the US, and also in Italy, in Portugal, of course, then the rest of Europe, and looking at this arc of this variety of practices and say, okay, but these people, they have something more to expand if they come together to then go deeper into the practice, meaning that someone who is doing breath work is actually an amazing human being, understands so many other principles, and somehow people want it and label that person as a breathwork facilitator. But if that breathwork is combined with hypnosis, or it's combined with music, or with singing, or with dance, or with different modalities that actually enhance that practice, then we are giving. I always say, I'm never creating with you for what you do. I want to create with you for who you are. And that's really important, because then at RIMA, like all the facilitators, we are creating novelty. We are creating on the spot. We worked previously on it, but we are creating new modalities and new approaches and techniques with every new odyssey. And it shows that we can master some craft, but then a capacity to transcend that practice and to bring it to a general realm and to tap into this collective intelligence is actually enhancing all these practices. So it's one thing. And the second thing is like we integrate these practices into the sequence. So nothing is labeled as such as we have a breathwork. At 10 a.m. we have a story, and then that story leads you to a behavior. And in this behavior, at some point, you will be asked to breathe. But then that's only a little tool or an ingredient in this salad. And then after, the meal is totally different.
And man, as an artist myself, the possibility of creating cracks between my work and collapsing into all the people you have around this is just so exciting. And there are literally no limitations to the things you're willing to do.
Yes, there's no limitation. It's just using all this matter, all these amazing talents, and say, let's sit down around the topic and see, now we want to talk about AI, and we want to create such a mind-boggling, immersive experience that is infused with elements of what we believe in, meaning this interconnectedness or this relationship to the world, and also insufflating or instilling different elements for hope and for transformational change. And then people are finding their own keys in that journey. But then that is really like potentially can expand to using any kind of spaces. Then any kind of spaces can become a space for transformation.
Yeah, and one theme you touched on many times, the keys that are found during this journey. And I would love to expand on, what do you feel like the keys are that are being found in this experience? Are you nudging people in a certain direction, or how do you define those?
Yes, it's very interesting, because this idea of receiving a knowledge or receiving a teaching, I'm French, so I always had a little issue with dogma. The French thinkers is always like critical thinking and like never really believe like the story of one source, and just like thesis, antithesis. And I believe we do have inside of us a capacity to arrange our consciousness, our own story, and we can just rely on environment that is providing that space of support, like we are on our own healer. And that realization led me to more like place on the way little hints, little keys, little Easter eggs. I put a lot of Easter eggs in the experiences that are just here for you when the moment is right. They are like these signs and symbols when you put your intention and your attention into something in your life at some point, and then you open yourself to receive these signs. Then I place in this environment so many different signs, so many different moments that you can read from one way to another, but will be relevant for you because you are in a space of openness. You are tuned into a frequency where you allow yourself to receive. You allow yourself to use your this environment to build up a new narrative for yourself. And that's, for me, giving back the power as well of the person responsible for their own path, because they are the one who are composing with these pieces that are left on the road.
I love this rediscovery of symbology that moves through your work. When people talk about symbols, I believe it's a rediscovery of what speaks to you, right? When I'm in a certain frame of mind, I see a feather flying through the window. It's not a question whether it's true or not. It's a matter of what is this saying to me in this moment in time, and giving people an opportunity to be in that dream state, to rediscover their own symbology and the way things move through their lives. Beautiful gift.
Exactly, you said exactly right. That is power symbol. That's the power of imagination. That's the power of myth. This is why we are building our own stories. And it's just about opening that space. And then things are coming in. And yes, it goes also deeper. It goes also, somehow we play with this element of continuity and fracture. And then the different events along the way are making sense as you move further. Meaning it's like an arc that end up in this cycle as well. That's why the Odyssey is, because like a movie or like a TV series, along the way you find different hints and keys that then make sense at one moment, and then I also reintroduce another moment. And how do you create this moment of surprises? How do you create this moment of meaning that is interconnected? And then the most important part is like when we are all playing on that dimension of intentionally putting these elements here and there, and we say, oh, it's going to have this effect or that effect. What happens on another layer of dimension, meaning on something we cannot control, is mind-blowing. I explain. In every Odyssey, we are just putting on that dimension elements that say, okay, it's going to happen at the moment when the moment will be perfect, like people we have realization. But then we have elements from outside, out of our control that happens. Could be into nature, could be like any external factors that could be predicted, that happen and create this perfect synchronicity. When you are in the chapel and we are all connecting and tapping into a frequency with the voice and have this very profound moment about also our ancestors, and suddenly a white owl is flying into the window and start to dance and fly, circulating above us and sitting in the corner to look at us. And then one of the participants explained that his grandmother just passed away a week ago and she was collecting only white animals in her mansion in Belgium. And then that all is representing her. And suddenly she's like fixing you like in that moment. That is one of the many examples that every time happens when you are making sure you open yourself to sign in symbols. Then you have a very transcendent synchronicity and moment that can be explained, that is adding a layer of wonders to the experience.
These are the kind of stories that you hear from the shamanic circles, right? And I find it fascinating that you're able to cultivate these environments to allow nature to speak, to allow the symbols to come through these messages, through these cracks and through these realizations that is not tied to these medicines in a way, creating safe spaces that you can consistently can show up in a safe manner to go through without all the barrier to entry that comes with having to sit with the ayahuasca, that comes with having to sit in these places. It's really amazing.
And it comes with a lot of surrender. It really forces us to flow with what's happening. So to have a very detailed, minute by minute, precise schedule, and at the same time knowing that everything could change and everything needs to be accepted in that change. And Costa Rica was a great example, because you have like suddenly tropical rain happening, and then realizing that every time nature was speaking was perfectly aligned with what we needed. And then just flowing with that, and then allowing this natural element to be part of the experience, natural or not natural. Sometimes it's a disruptive element from the outside, but actually was very precisely meaningful in that moment. So that is creating another relationship to reality where everything becomes a sign and symbols to allow oneself to evolve in this direction.
Yeah, and we asked a question earlier. It's what makes something spiritual? And my friend Darius, who actually had it on the most recent podcast, he has a beautiful take on this. And he thinks of it as how can we be in service, right? And creating these containers where you are in service to nature. You're in service to the people that you're serving. You're in service to the community and the environment that you're embedded in. And that's the path to walk into, not into spirit, but into through surrender, into service of the things that you want to see amplified in the world.
Yes, there is this compass. And I think this compass is adjusted throughout your life experiences and throughout this moment of realization that you've been through. It came from a more intellectual level. And when you think about the Maslow pyramid, you have the self-realization. And then there is the last stage that people don't talk about, which is self-transcendence, which is the act of actually realize yourself is going through the act of helping others. So that's the last Maslow pyramid. So it's more like intellectual like aspect. And then you go into the somatic and you realize like how incredible good and you are feeling when you are surrounded by the people that you put in a space of harmony and beauty and love. And then you have the subconscious level where, okay, like beyond all that, the meaning of what I'm here is to be able to really make sure I'm clear as a channel for that source and that power, or not even a power, it's like that source of making sure you are here for others. And being in service is actually not something that is too much intellectualized with Maslow, not too much felt in the body. It's more something like it's a three at the same time. It's a real feeling that is guiding you as your compass to make sure that in every decision you're doing, every moment you have, there is this feeling deep inside that says, yes, this is why we're here. And it's an embedded feeling that goes, that radiates and that is felt unconsciously by everyone who is around. So being in service is like polishing your own mirror, making sure the more you look at yourself and you are clear, the more you can actually make sure people can reflect on that as well and to create this polishing for themselves. So it starts with yourself.
And one thing that's beautiful, I think you touched on, is people are always like, how do you lead the spiritual path? Is it through the masculine structure, or is it more through the feminine surrender? And even in RIMA, it feels like you've encapsulated that beautifully through the sequencing, but also leaving room for, we call them desirable difficulties to emerge.
Yes, like being in Ibiza, and I started the first RIMA in Ibiza. So that was the island of the feminine. That was the first time where a couple of years ago, like I started to understand the power of just sit and listen and what it means for flowing this energy of surrender and at the same time taking action for what we want to see in the world. So it becomes a dance. It's really, we are here so little time, like everything we're doing in this world is just allowing us to find fluidity in the way we are moving throughout life. And it comes with an element of grace. We're here also to make sure like we can flow and dance with grace in this moment. And that is like that is a life project. That is something that is, all these intentions are actually guided by this deepest feeling about the world. And as you said, the team is incredible human beings because they are driven by the same intentions. They are driven by the same sense of service. They are driven by the same sense of being here for others because they know that's what the world needs. And that's really the beauty of this project, the collective.
Oh, I feel like we could go on for another 3 hours. Yeah, I would love to know, where can people find you? Where can people find RIMA? And where can we immerse ourselves in these experiences?
So RIMA Experience is on different social platforms, Instagram, on internet. You can contact us for having more information. We are organizing for Odyssey in Tuscany in enchanted, incredible castle to explore this theme of the old Renaissance and how we are moving towards new Renaissance. And then we'll be traveling and also doing other many experiences around the world. It's ongoing project that change, and it's represent life, which is this constant change. So every experience is unique. Yes.
Then where can people find you?
On Theodore Bajard, Theodore BA on Instagram. And yes.
Great. Yeah, brother, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, if anybody has a chance to check out these experiences, I highly encourage you to, especially this new one with the upcoming new Renaissance, something that I'm personally very excited to lean into and witness myself. So hope you all have a good day. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much, Lee.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.